Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the Cost of Legislation Experiment, episode 11, lesson 11, outline 11, whatever you want to call it. We got 3 lessons to go. I hope people are getting healed and fixed, a better understanding. The psychological cost of shared governance, shared sovereignty, the psychological cost of shared governance, because most people believe the conflict is legal. It isn't. The legal conflict's only the visible symptom. The deeper conflict occurs inside the human mind, because every system eventually teaches people how safe they are, how protected they are, how vulnerable they are, how much trust they should place in the institutions governing them. When a system places 2 competing governors over the same female boundary, it does not merely create legal tension, it creates psychological tension, permanent psychological tension. Human beings are not designed to live indefinitely inside unresolved contradictions. They eventually choose adapt, withdraw, submit, resist, or disengage. The problem with co-mutual governance is not simply that it creates disagreement, it creates a permanently unsettled environment where female biology and identity governance continually compete for authority. And that competition exacts a psychological cost. Women do not experience governance at legislation. They experience governance as lived reality. The woman enters the space. The woman assesses the environment. The woman interprets the boundary. The woman decides whether she feels protected. And this process occurs before law, before politics, before ideology. It occurs inside the biological nervous system of the woman. For generations, female boundaries carried a psychological message. You are protected here. You may relax here. You may recover here. You may be vulnerable here. You may stop scanning the environment here. And that message mattered because safety is not merely physical. Safety is permission to stop preparing for danger. Co-mutual governance disrupts that permission on a psychological existential level. The woman no longer experiences a single governing authority and structure. She experiences competing authority, structure. Biology remains, identity remains, the collision, the conflicts, the catastrophe remains. Now, the nervous system notices these things immediately. Vigilance increases, monitoring increases, evaluation increases, and the woman begins assessing the category itself. The environment no longer fully carries the burden of protection. She begins carrying part of that burden herself. And this is where the hidden psychological transfer occurs. Responsibility moves from system to individual. The institution says the protection remains. The woman thinks, then why do I feel responsible for constantly determining whether it still functions? And that question matters. It accumulates through vigilance, through uncertainty, through adaptation. through repeated exposure to unresolved contradiction. And eventually the woman stops expecting certainty. She expects negotiation. She expects challenge. She expects reinterpretation. And once that expectation becomes normal, the original protective purpose of the boundary, the biological boundaries, begins weakening from within. This is my closing statement. The greatest psychological cost of shared governance is not fear. The shared governance of biological women with identity, ideology, is not fear. It's fatigue. The fatigue of carrying a burden that the boundary was originally created to carry for you, the fatigue of continuously evaluating a category that was once settled, the fatigue of existing inside a protection that no longer feels exclusively governed by the principle that created it. Because the human mind can tolerate conflict. What it struggles to tolerate indefinitely is permanent, unresolved conflict. And that is precisely what co-mutual governance, since the law of 2013, has created. I'll see you in the next episode.